In 1442, the Turkish Sultan enslaved 1,000 young boys to bolster his army. These boys endured brutal beatings and were rigorously trained to kill without mercy. Among them emerges Dracula, known as the Son of the Dragon. He became a killing machine, leading his troops to conquer a city and impaling his enemies on wooden stakes, earning him the title of the Impaler. After his time in the Sultan's army, Dracula returned to his hometown, Transylvania, where he had a wife Maria and a child 𝐓𝐻𝐻𝐻. He became the king of a small Eastern European country. He hoped to rule in peace and escape the battlefield. However, he could not escape the curse of his past. His peaceful days are disrupted by a helmet. On that day, Dracula, accompanied by his guards in river near the border. Dracula knew the nature go the Turkish Sultan. The appearance of scouts signified that the Sultan had suspected him. In the distance there was a tall mountain. Dracula, concluding the helmet washed downstream formed the mountain. Unfortunately, this is the beginning of the curse. Dracula marches with 2 guards on the mountain top. There was a cave here. Dracula, accompanied by 2 soldiers, enters a dark and ominous cave after discovering the remnants of a Turkish scout's helmet. Inside, they find disturbing signs. The scout's blood has been drained, and the floor is littered with crushed bones. As Dracula and his men investigate, they sense they are being watched. Suddenly, they are attacked and one of Dracula's guards is swiftly killed, and before the remaining guard can react, he is overpowered and dragged away by the creature. Dracula attempts to fight back with his sword but is knocked to the ground. He crawls back towards the cave entrance, narrowly escaping the creature's clutches. The creature halts its pursuit when exposed to sunlight, indicating it fears the light. This gives Dracula a chance to flee. Shaken and shocked by the encounter, Dracula manages to escape the cave. However, the Dracula will soon return here once again. Back at the castle, the priest told Dracula about an ancient legend. A Roman warrior, in order to gain power, made a deal with the devil. However, he was tricked by the devil, who granted him power but transformed him into a monster that fed on human blood and could only act at night. In day he have to hide into that cave. However, there is a way to set him free. By finding the next successor, the curse would be broken, and the warrior could see the light of the day again. Dracula, the king of a small Eastern European country, could have led his people to peace. However, he faced a grave threat from the Ottoman Empire. They looked down upon Dracula. The invoice they send, which demanded 1,000 children as tribute. Refusing will result in invasion in force by the Ottoman Empire. Such unreasonable demand was a clear declaration of war. Dracula understood the Turks well. He knew they would enslave the children without hesitation. Faced with the dire situation, Dracula decided to personally seek the Sultan. As they grown up together, he hoped the Sultan would spare his people, but the Ottoman Empire was formidable, with an army of 100,000 making conquest effortless. The Sultan, focused solely on conquest, dismissed Dracula's concerns and demanded 1,000 children as tribute, punishing Dracula for previous conscription. Additionally, he required Dracula's own son as a hostage. The queen was heartbroken upon hearing the Sultan's demand for their son and refused to let him be taken. Despite her pleas, the Sultan's guards arrived to take the child. Showing bravery, 𝐓𝐻𝐻𝐻 stepped forward, comforting his father and expressing readiness to take responsibility. Strengthened by his son's courage, Dracula ordered him to flee and then engaged the guards. In a fierce battle, Dracula swiftly killed the guards, marking the beginning of war between Draculas and the Ottoman Empire. This act of defiance sealed the conflict, escalating the struggle between the two nations. Although Dracula was brave, facing the formidable Ottoman Empire felt like a fly against a bull. Realizing he needed another way to protect his people and loved ones, Dracula revisited the mountain cave in search of the legendary blood demon. He knew the demon existed, as he witnessed its mighty powers when it killed 2 of his former soldiers. After a journey, Dracula entered the cave once more. Suddenly, an old man appeared before him and asked, "What kind of man walks into his own grave?" Desperate for power, Dracula pleaded for the old man's assistance. The old man, revealing himself as the cursed vampire. He instantly grabbed Dracula, choking him out and scratched his neck, revealing his blood. After the old man tasted his blood, he then broke a skull and offered his own blood to Dracula, telling him that drinking it would grant him unimaginable power. However, the price was steep. Dracula would only be able to act at night. He would become incredibly dependent on human blood, and all his loved ones would die because of him. After considering the odds, Dracula decided to drink the blood. He soon felt dizzy, after which everything around him starts spinning and soon he passed out. Unaware of how long had passed, Dracula regains consciousness on a riverbank. As he awakens, he feels a strange sensation throughout his entire body. When he stands up, he starts noticing his new, heightened senses. He can hear the sound of spiders hunting nearby and see animals miles away in the forest. Looking up, he sees the stars and the Milky Way in the sky with astonishing clarity, sights he never imagined possible before. In this moment, Dracula understands that the powers of the vampire have been transferred to him. Dracula sees a distant fire and senses something is wrong. He rushes towards the castle, transforming into a swarm of bats. Meanwhile, the enemies are attacking with cannons, causing chaos and casualties within the castle. Upon arrival, Dracula quickly finds and reunites with his wife, gives her a kiss, and delivers a rousing speech to his people, assuring them that their enemies will fall and that he already had paid the price for such. Next, Dracula emerges from the wreckage, enraged and empowered. While vengeance running through his veins, he attacks. Transforming into a Grim Reaper-like figure, he relentlessly killed the enemy soldiers, cutting through their ranks. Within an hour, Dracula had completely annihilated the vanguard of the Ottoman Empire. His display of power stunned the soldiers who came to assist him. Dracula then orders his people to retreat to the safety of a monastery high in the mountains, ensuring their protection against further attacks. Despite Dracula's immense power, he avoids risking his people's lives against an army of 100,000 men. While resting one evening, his wife Maria attempts to comfort him, and as they begin to make love, Dracula's bloodlust is triggered. He can see the blood flowing through her veins, and it becomes a struggle to suppress his vampiric impulses. Overwhelmed, he flees into the woods to avoid harming her. Meanwhile, a beggar approaches Dracula. He cuts his own flesh with a knife, and offers his fresh blood, hoping to become Dracula's servant due to his extreme worship of vampires. Dracula refuses the offer and, in a display of his strength, throws the beggar towards a tree. The beggar departs. However, Dracula doesn't want to become a blood-sucking devil. The next morning, Maria notices something wasn't right as she noticed that his scars have fully healed, prompting her to question him. Under her pressure, Dracula confesses his deal with the devil to gain vampire powers. To prove his claim, Dracula tears apart a nearby curtain, exposing his skin to sunlight, which begins to peel. Seeing this, Maria believes him but is deeply heartbroken. She understands that Dracula made this sacrifice to protect their family and people. Simultaneously, Sultan arrives with his army and was enraged after seeing the aftermath of the last night war. Dracula, unable to appear in sunlight, is reported by Maria as having gone out for investigation. She commands the group to hasten their journey to the mountaintop monastery for safety. During their trek, the civilians are ambushed by enemy forces with only a few guards to defend them. At this critical moment, Dracula emerges from the shadows, using his vampire powers to fiercely defend his people. He eliminates the attackers and ensures the civilians reach the monastery safely. However, one adversary manages to survive. Dracula personally supervised his subordinates as they forged weapons to prepare for battle, but his fear of sunlight raised suspicion from a priest, as he's the same priest who told Dracula about the cursed blood-sucking demon. The priest arrived with a silver sword and, upon entering Dracula's tent, cut it open, allowing sunlight to flood in. Instantly, Dracula's skin began to peel, causing fear and panic among his own people. Amidst the chaos, the townspeople, frightened and panicked, grabbed torches and prepared to burn Dracula as they perceived him as a demon. Thick smoke soon billowed, obscuring the sun's light, but Dracula emerged from the flames unscathed, his supernatural resilience on full display. Confronting the crowd, he questioned whether they had forgotten his protection and sacrifices for them. If not for Maria's timely intervention, Dracula's rage could have led to a devastating massacre. Meanwhile, Sultan learned of Dracula's transformation into a vampire. He took immediate action to protect his troops. He ordered all soldiers to wear blindfolds to shield them from seeing anything that might affect their morale, effectively keeping them in the dark about the true danger. This strategy slowed their advance as they approached Dracula's stronghold. As night fell, Dracula was ready. In the darkness, he was nearly invincible. Dracula uses his powers and summons an army of tens of thousands of bats. Next, he raised his hand, causing the swarm to coalesce into a massive, clawed arm that struck the enemy with this terrifying force, killing many of the soldiers. He then gestured a fist and struck the Ottoman army, causing massive casualties. Sensing the right moment, Dracula transforms into a swarm of bats and infiltrates the enemy's ranks to eliminate the Sultan. However, to his surprise, the Sultan is a decoy. Realizing the gravity of the situation, enemy forces launch a brutal attack on the monastery atop the mountain, killing the soldiers and cornering Maria and 𝐏𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐜 near a cliff. After which 𝐏𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐜 is captured by the enemy and pushing Dracula's wife off a cliff. Dracula flies towards Maria while trying his best to save her, but have to witness his wife hit the ground. With little time left, she pleads with Dracula to drink her blood as the sun is about to rise, which would render him powerless to save their son and people. Reluctantly, Dracula sinks his fangs into her neck. From that moment, the beloved King Dracula is no longer. The vampire ancestor Dracula has ascended, now consumed by rage. On the other hand, the Turkish soldiers believed they had defeated Dracula, unaware of his immense powers and the vengeance raging within him. Fueled by revenge, Dracula used his blood to transform his dying people into a formidable vampire army. With this nearly invincible force at his command, Dracula launched a brutal assault on the Ottoman forces, ruthlessly slaughtering them and draining every drop of their blood. The Sultan, aware of Dracula's capability and vulnerabilities, prepared meticulously for the inevitable confrontation. With the help of his men, he fortified his tent with silver coins and armed himself with a silver sword. As the duel began, the Sultan's preparations proved effective as he gained the upper hand, using the surrounding to his advantage while driving Dracula to the brink of defeat. Dracula, vulnerable to silver, weakened, using this Sultan overpower him. After finding a stake nearby, the Sultan nearly managed to pierce Dracula's heart with a stake, exploiting the vampire's weakness. In this dire moment, Dracula spotted his son nearby, which reignited his fighting spirit. Dracula transformed into a swarm of bats and stabbed the Sultan from behind. After draining every last drop of blood out of his body, and showing his true form as Vampire King Dracula, instantly killing him and leaving his lifeless body behind. Dracula, having just saved his son, faces betrayal from his transformed vampire followers, who now threaten the boy. Realizing the peril, Dracula immediately springs into action, stabbing and impaling one of the troublemakers, turning him into nothing but ash. As the surrounding vampires wants to devour Dracula's son, he acts quickly to protect him. Dracula entrusts the boy to a priest, to ensure his son could ascend the throne safely, knowing the holy protection of a cross would keep the vampires at bay. Looking up at the sky, Dracula reflects on his promise to his dying wife. Determined to fulfill her last wish, he uses his immense power to disperse the clouds, allowing sunlight to pour down upon the vampire army. The rays of the sun cause the vampires to disintegrate into thin air almost instantly. As Dracula himself begins to disintegrate, he finds a sense of redemption in his self-sacrifice, knowing he has saved his son and his people. Next, after Dracula's son, 𝐏𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠, ascends as the new king, the same beggar drags Dracula's lifeless body and slices his hand, offering his own blood to Dracula. This act immediately revives him. Centuries later, Dracula roams a modern city where he encounters a woman named Mira, who bears a striking resemblance to his long-lost wife. As Dracula and Mira get acquainted, a mysterious vampire watches them from a distance. The film ends on a suspenseful note, hinting at future developments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.